Welcome back to Chapter 12, Delivery Methods and Practice Sessions. And it's interesting, like I was saying in our last video, there's always a method to the madness when I swap things up. Chapter 11 is on anxiety, and the last thing I'd ever want to do is to begin a public speaking unit talking about anxiety. So we're going to come back to that one in another video. So what we're eventually building up to in about 3 weeks from now is an informative speech. Now, I posted the guidelines in Blackboard, and that's going to be a separate mini lecture that we go over in 3 weeks. But the reason I put it up there is so you know what we're eventually working towards. Typically in a face-to-face class, we do 2 graded extemporaneous speeches. We'll talk about extemporaneous in this video tonight. And the reason why I'm doing 1 in the summer session is because I'm choosing that we build all the community around discussion board in other ways. We did the video grading, and I'm hoping this is going to give you an opportunity to get to know your classmates a bit. And then when we get up to speeches in a few weeks, everybody feels a bit more comfortable. So again, those guidelines are posted. You're basically researching a topic of your interest that you're going to be sharing with the class. So in terms of Chapter 12, I was like starting with one of my favorite people. Yell out if you know the guy. Remember, I won't be able to hear you. Yeah, that's Jerry Seinfeld. And I love his monologues. And he's famous for talking about comparing public speaking with death. So according to most studies, people's number 1 fear is public speaking, and number 2 is death. So if to the average person, they'd rather be the ones in the casket than actually giving the eulogy. I don't know how you feel about that one. There are a few people who actually did rank this one as the highest that they were looking forward to. It's definitely a good skill to have. And you're going to get to do practice methods throughout. Ideally, you're going to be doing that on your own time with your friends and family. And then when it's go time in a few weeks, you'll feel really confident. I just love Mark Twain. This is my catchphrase for liar, liar, pants on fire. So what he's saying in essence is that there's 2 kinds of speakers, the ones that are nervous and the ones that are liars. There's nothing wrong at all with being nervous. So what the chapters are going to go over for these few is about ways that we cope with it. What I always tell people is, if someone tells, that they're cold and somebody says, don't be cold. You're like, well, that's not really helpful. But we can do things like put on sweaters. We can turn on the heat. We can go into the sun. Or if someone says, don't be sad. Oh, great, I'm not sad anymore. No, but we might put on a funny TV show. We might call or text a friend. My personal favorite, go out for ice cream. Well, all different things that we might do. So again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being nervous. What we're going to be talking about over the next few sessions is how to cope with it. So the main focus of this chapter talks about 4 methods of delivery. And remember, as always, if you can't see the PowerPoint well, you can always pull up another screen that I have on Blackboard. Are you getting used to clip art? Can you tell what this is supposed to be? I'll give you a few minutes to think about it. We'll come back to it at the end. Who is that person? What does she represent? So there's 4 main methods of delivery. Here's where you really get to test your clip art, how you've been doing the last few weeks. So the very first one is impromptu. And what that means is very little preparation. These are cufflinks. So off the cuff or winging it. What you're going to see in each one of these, they're embedded videos. So as always, I don't play these videos in these mini lectures, but I always encourage you either to pause right here and go ahead and play it or just listen to it at the end. So this one is David Belial, and he got pretty famous a few years ago in Little League World Series, and sadly his team lost. I promise I'm not killing an ending here. And he gave the most heartfelt speech to his tween kids, a team of very, very, very upset 11, 12, and 13-year-olds that they had just lost. So when we talk about off the cuff, we never say for any of these methods that one is good or one is bad. They all have their strengths and they all have their weaknesses. So obviously, when something doesn't have a lot of preparation to it, it may not be organized very well. But again, that may not always matter. So you're probably going to find that you like his speech a whole lot. You might need to get some Kleenex out. It's a little bit of a tearjerker. The next one we're going to talk about is manuscript. And you can see for this one, her eyes are pointing down. So this is famous for maybe teleprompters, or if somebody writes a speech out for verbatim, word for word. And sometimes people could pull it off really well. So for instance, when you watch the news, the newscasters are reading off a teleprompter all the time. I remember when Saturday Night Live used to be funny. If you've ever seen it where sometimes they pan the camera the wrong way and you could see one of the hosts or one of the actors sometimes even just reading off a cue card. So this is Roger Goodell. And years ago, he was giving a speech that he probably did not write. Probably one of his PR, public relations people had written it for him, on Ray Rice and issues with domestic violence. And when you play this video, you can see him looking down and barely looking up and just glancing, and he didn't know his speech really well. And then we're going to contrast it when he was just in the news very recently, and when he was talking about the protests and that he got things wrong a couple years ago. And you can see now in the second video when you play it, he does a much better job through still a manuscript delivery, but he knows it much better. And he's probably looking at the teleprompter right before. The third one that we're going to move into is memorize. Now, I'll never ask you to memorize a speech in this class. The speech that we're going to be doing is 4 to 6 minutes. Actors memorize. I'm going to tell you to memorize your first line. It's going to give you more confidence. It's also going to make you seem very confident. I'm going to tell you to memorize the order of your main points, and we'll talk about this in a few weeks. And then I'm going to tell you to memorize your last line, your ending. That's it. For the most part, when actors do it, they have tons of preparation. What you might remember is Marshawn Lynch from a few years back. And his speech was really short. When you play it, you're going to hear about how he didn't want to get fined. So memorized speeches are good when they're very short, where the textbook gives an example. If someone is the ambassador or the peer mentor on a campus and they're giving tours to other students, it might be the people who walk backwards really well. And if they're giving those speeches over and over again, it might be memorized. But here in a Com 101 class, not at all. In fact, the one that we focus on is extemporaneous. And you can see how happy he is. He's so well prepared. He's making great eye contact. He's using gestures. And what this one means is it's really well organized, but it sounds conversational. So you'll actually notice now that we've been together for the last few weeks, all of these speeches that we're doing through here are extemporaneous. All my main points are laid out. But anytime I give a mini lecture, when it's in class, there's typically conversation, so it doesn't go exactly as planned. And even now, while I reread the chapters and I certainly go through all my notes, my words are more spontaneous. But in terms of extemporaneous, that is very well organized. You can even flip ahead to the next slide and see what I'm going to be going over next. It goes in the same order. So this is Randy Pausch, and he's probably one of my favorite inspirational speakers. He was a professor at Carnegie Mellon University, and he got very famous a few years ago, about 10 years ago actually. You know you're famous when you make it onto Oprah. He was dying with pancreatic cancer, and he was a computer scientist at Carnegie Mellon. And when he went on Oprah, he had given a few life lessons that he had given in a class speech. They made it bigger onto a whole lecture series on campus. So this is one of the longer videos that you'll ever see in one of these PowerPoints. This one is actually the one from Oprah where it's 10 minutes long. If you're inspired by it, and I've met very few people in my years who are not, this one is a 75-minute original. I don't suggest watching it as you're going through all the slides, but maybe when you're just ready to take a breather and you need something uplifting, it's meant to be watched, of course, with your favorite non-alcoholic drink, with your feet up on the couch or in your bed, for a wonderful, great lift-me-up. And that's Randy Pouch. As we move in to the last part for this, when you finally choose a speech, and again, you're not going to be picking topics for another few weeks. If you do want to go ahead and look through that 8-page handout that's on Blackboard, you can. Feel free to come by for office hours or shoot me an email about what you want your topic to be, but it's nothing you have to choose for 3 weeks. So the reason why I like going over this so early is because typically in a face-to-face class, people have so much fear about it. In an online class, I think that fear gets escalated. So that's why I like introducing this early on. You get to hear about all the techniques, you let it marinate, and then we'll come back to it. So after you start thinking about a topic, and we'll go over outlines, again, in about 3 weeks for this. When you craft and draft your ideas, you get the clip art, you want to yell it out, yeah, you slice and dice it. It's a great idea to practice in front of people. So whether that's a sibling or a parent or a husband and wife, a boyfriend and girlfriend, a cousin, maybe co-workers, however you want to do it, but it's always a good idea to get feedback. The truth is most people don't do that, but for the ones who do and then incorporate their feedback, usually people feel more confident and certainly their speeches are a lot stronger. You could also record yourself, just on your iPhone or whatever camera that you have, and then play it back and see what you liked and what you could do better. More clip art. Here we're talking about the finishing touches, putting the sprinkles on it. That's why we always do things in stages. Hopefully you find that we never have to rush in here. Everything is planned out, certainly in the extemporaneous way. So I hope you start looking forward to it. Like I always say, nerves are completely understandable. The more prepared we are, the easier it gets, I promise. So when we're finally up to it in a few weeks, I'm going to tell you to review these at the time. Yeah, I always say practice about 3 to 5 times, certainly standing up because that's how it's going to be in the real scenario. If you do it 10 times, it's probably going to sound robotic. If you only do it once, it probably won't be enough to make those edits that you want. And we'll see you for the next one. The next one coming up is on anxiety and all the different ways we can cope with it.